Welcome to the Krav Maga Worldwide podcast. Today's episode is something special. Your host and 3rd Dan Black Belt Joel Ellenbecker sits down with Deputy Chief Instructor and 4th Dan Black Belt Instructor CJ Kirk to talk about his brand new book, Conquer Culture: How Warriors and Winners Lead and Succeed. This isn't just another training manual. It's part of a personal story, part field-tested philosophy that is born from decades of experience as a Krav Maga instructor, a life coach, business leader, and survivor. From navigating a gunpoint robbery to coaching high-level professionals, CJ has spent years noticing patterns, what works, what breaks people, and what actually moves the needle toward a fulfilled and purpose-driven life. In Conquer Culture, he unpacks the growth precursors that prepare us to transform, the doctrine that drives high performers, and the systems that help ordinary people do extraordinary things. And yeah, there's a whole lot of Krav Maga in there too, and gaining an understanding of how the principles of Krav Maga extend beyond the mats into our everyday lives. They talk about what it means to be a warrior, how to redefine success, and a protocol for noticing that keeps you moving forward when adversity tries to pull you under. This is the kind of conversation that challenges you to think harder, aim higher, and live with more clarity and conviction. So whether you are a martial artist, a coach, a parent, or someone who just wants to live with more purpose, this one's for you.
Well, hey CJ, how's it going today?
Yeah, I'm good, Joel. Feeling good. How about you?
I'm super excited. I got a chance, a month or so ago to just get like a sneak peek at the new book you wrote, and I wanted to just take a chance to talk about it and learn about the process and the mission behind it, and all things about the book.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it. When I started the book, I should say just prior, I didn't really think I was going to write a book. It seemed like a pretty daunting process. Um, but I actually just sat down every day for 5 or 10 minutes and started writing and tried to follow the atomic habits sort of playbook for creating a habit. And that actually worked.
Yeah, I mean, I love books, and I feel like they've changed my life, and I've gotten so much from being able to read them. But I've also had that thought of like, oh man, like what would it actually take to sit down and get all those thoughts out and work on them? So the atomic habits, like you just started with like a few minutes each day and then built up from there.
Yeah, I just made a commitment to develop a habit as opposed to a page count or something that was a little more daunting. Just 5 or 10 minutes every day, and then you look up and you go to sit down for 5 or 10 minutes, and it's a half an hour later because you developed this habit. I think the other thing that I really needed to recognize as I started writing the book is um, writing isn't perfect. Just what's in the book is probably like version 12 or edit 12 of what I started with. And so if you're an aspiring writer, my limited advice is just write,
Hmm.
even if it doesn't, seem articulate at the time. Capture your ideas, create your logic chains, and because there's going to be lots of edits. And that was one of the things that was really um, almost daunting to me, was talking to people who wrote books and saying, well, you'll probably rewrite your book, 5 to 10 times. And I thought, who wants to do that?
Yeah, that sounds crazy. What got the inspiration to want to write a book? Like how did it start for you?
That's a good question. I don't know that I recall. I know that my kids, I'd written some stuff for my kids, just shorter stories. And I started talking to my wife at one point about some of the things I learned and some of the parallels between the concepts and principles in Krav Maga and living life, and how you can see them in different people and or different things that people do. And it just spawned an idea. I should write about this. And as I wrote about it, structurally, I realized I should probably, you know, put this into a book. It sort of fits that particular structure.
So it's been like a, from the inception of your first like inkling about, oh, maybe I should write this book to it coming to fruition. It's been like years, decade. How long has it been brewing for you?
That's a good question. I mean, the stuff in the book has been brewing for nearly 3 decades. I would say the book, I really started it last winter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a culmination of things that I've learned. Not a complete culmination, but certainly things that fit this particular sort of architecture. The book, by the way, is called Conquer Culture: How Warriors and Winners Lead and Succeed. And then I have a little subtitles: What Krav Maga training, the Navy SEALs, performance life coaching, and surviving a robbery at gunpoint have taught me. So it's definitely a decades long sort of um, tome into what I've learned, or some of the things I've learned, a lot of things that I've learned as a result of those experiences.
Yeah, I mean, as I was flipping through it and reading some of the intros to the chapters and things, like what I really loved about it so far, and I can't wait to like get a full deep dive on it, is just how applicable it is for me, but for licensees and instructors and students to take the Krav Maga principles, to take what we do and learn on the mat and like just like integrate it and have like another way of studying or consuming the information. So I think it's just like a really powerful thing that you did, for people outside of the Krav Maga community, but also for everyone here to be able to go deeper with it.
Yeah, thank you. I think ultimately I started writing the book, and I dedicated the book to my 3 boys who are still young, and who are still navigating much of what they need to learn to set themselves up to be contented or deeply satisfied with life. I don't say successful because it's a little bit of a loaded word,
Right.
although we define what warriors and winners and success is, or I do in the book. And it's not what people think. As a coach, a performance coach, a life coach, I've coached lots of successful men that have, been very successful in the corporate ladder, men that have started and sold multiple companies, and they're pretty unhappy.
Yeah.
Um, and the reason is they don't know what's next. And if what's next is the same thing they've done before, they recognize that the kind of contentment and deep satisfaction people really want in life is not available to them. And so a lot of that thought process kind of caused me to think, I really want my kids to learn some of these lessons. So it's required reading for them.
That's so cool. I think as I don't know if I'm still like a white belt in parenting, but I still feel new. My oldest son just lost his first tooth the other day, and I just think about the bond, of like with children and how at least, what's going on right now with my kids is like they're both just so excited about everything they're learning and they like actually come to me and they want knowledge and they want information. So to take, your life's work, all the things that you've learned and to distill it into this almost like I don't know if I want to call it a manual, but it's kind of like a manual of like, hey, follow these lessons and to have that for your kids, I think it's going to be just such a powerful thing for them.
Yeah, I would say it really encapsulates what I've learned um, at the cross section of learning and Krav Maga and coaching, and everything that we engage in the world that creates an outcome consistently is a system, and the systems are in some ways similar. But when you look at one system and the intersection of another system, and you see some commonality um, or even causality with the outputs, it's really important to stop and say, okay, I could I can use this system to create outcomes in my life. Oh, sorry, I lost my voice a couple weeks ago. I'm still getting it back. Uh, use a system to create outcomes in my life. The book really is introduction to what warriors and winners are. We go into in the book, or I go into the book, growth precursors, the
Mhm.
precursors for growth, and then the warriors and winners doctrine. And then there's a section, sort of implementation section, and a final encouragement. But I think it's important that people think of it in this way, like, what are the precursors for success? In other words, how do I set the conditions for success? And then what are the things, I call them doctrine, what are the things that I need to consider, um, that can drive me forward or drive the trajectory of my life in a direction I want it to go?
Yeah, that's so amazing. And I think, maybe it's obvious, maybe it's not. It's like there's a few ways to learn things, and one is like to have to go through the experiences and sometimes, learn things the hard way. And another way is to follow footsteps. And a lot of things that we want to learn or obtain can be found in books. And like for you to put this stuff down, I don't think it's really been done before in this way in our universe. Like we have, books that illustrate techniques and go through how to do Krav Maga, but the ideas underneath them, I don't think have been spelled out in this way before. So I think that's really, really powerful.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, to me, was I kind of traced this all back to a robbery at gunpoint, right? Which was give or take 30 years ago. And my super deep desire to find something, because at the time I was robbed, I did jujitsu. Was not too long after UFC one, and I was doing kung fu, and guy stood, 3 feet from me. The gun was maybe 18 inches from me, leveled at my chest, and at that moment I was like, you know, why aren't I training this stuff? Why am I training for the fantasy, you know, ballroom brawl or parking lot encounter or schoolyard scuffle, when the truth is, people that want to hurt you or take things from you, want all the advantages that they can get. They don't want a fair fight. And I hadn't, you know really considered the idea that a weapon might be pulled on me. It's a crazy thing to say, but I got lost in the vacuum of martial arts and things that look cool and things that look tough, and they are cool and tough. But they weren't. It wasn't for the application I was looking for.
I think it can get easy to be lost in all of the martial arts movie cool moves and that sort of thing. But to like have all of that cut away, having an experience like that, I think just keep probably is kept you really grounded to what's most important. Is that like what shows up in the book?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I'm gonna open the book, and there's a lot of talking about what being a warrior and winner really is, right? And the table of contents sort of outlines that. A warrior is someone who has taken stock of their sacred things, those
Mm,
things for which they would kill or die without doubt or hesitation, and um, they live around a higher calling. It's a more selfless approach to living life. And I think what we forget, especially in Western culture, we forget that meaning in life really is about serving something outside yourself. And as a parent, you're probably getting the gist of that at this point. But it's important for people to recognize, to recalibrate even the way they think about living their lives as a warrior. As a winner, it's really someone who rethinks, um, about the concept of success and what does success really mean. And I think for most people, success is really about the kind of deep contentment we want as a result of our life and our life's work. It's really not about, you know, stacking coins or whatever the kids say these days. It's not about making money. It's not about the accolades. And we know this. We know this experientially, because when we have success, when we feel good, when we buy all the cool stuff we think we want to buy, we don't feel any different. We're on a high for about 30 minutes or an hour. I actually coached a man who was wildly successful. He had started from the ground and built and sold 4 companies. And I said to him, when you finish a project or you sell a company or you hit a milestone, are you super filled? He goes, yeah, I'm super filled up. And I said, like, super excited and satisfied. He goes, yeah. And I go, how long does that last? And he goes, 1 or 2 hours. And then I
Mm.
have to figure out I have to figure out what my next thing is. And I thought it was so telling that this is a common theme for people, both men and women, um, that we're on this sort of this never ending treadmill trying to create meaning and purpose and sort of a validation of self-worth with external things that are fleeting. And so the book really talks about the types of things, precursors that you need to create the kind of success that's lasting, and the doctrine that sort of drive you forward into your future.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think I'm looking through the table of contents, and it talks about what is a warrior and what is a winner, and I think you're right. I think the cultural definition of a winner is having money and cars and the big houses and all of that sort of thing. Um and for me, even times in my life, like I've been like, oh, I need to be more successful, and I might lean into just like one domain of my life and focus really heavily on the physical domain, and then I end up getting to the end of that and not feeling totally fulfilled. So does the book define like becoming a winner as having multiple facets and looking in different areas of your life?
Yeah, to a large degree, what you're really describing is the search for purpose. There's a
Mm.
section on with Viktor Frankl, which is I think, super powerful. And purpose is really at the intersection of your passion, which is sort of unique to you, like the way you relate to something that's really, gives you passion or you're passionate about. Principles, which is the way that you decided to live your life, your personal ethos, and the things you will and won't do, the lines you will and won't cross, and both in terms of doing good and not. And the
Yeah.
last one's potential, which is your mental, emotional, your intuitive, your spiritual, your physical domains. And when you find something in your life that helps you to grow your potential, and you can operate around that thing or in that thing by invoking your principles, and you have passion for it, that's where you find a ton of meaning, and that's where you find purpose. And it's not what we always think, right? Sometimes, a lot of times, Joel, that environment is just rife with adversity.
Mm.
It's so Viktor Frankl is a great example, right? Where he's in a concentration camp in World War II and people around him are dying. And as someone who is a therapist is trying to understand, his own situation and the situation of people around him, and something really powerful and foundational and something everybody needs to consider came out of his time in a concentration camp.
Right.
So for people that think about meaning and purpose, sometimes the biggest clues to what meaning and purpose will look like for you specifically come in times of great adversity. So don't just put your head down. Don't just try to wallow through it. There's something there for you that's powerful. And if you miss it, you'll be sorry.
I think another thing that's really awesome about what I can tell from the book so far is, some of these chapter titles and topics are things that, when I'm in conversation with you or I'm watching you teach, like these things are coming up anyways. Like, the most important thing, noticing. That's something that I've heard you speak about over and over again, like in Krav Maga and in life and in conversation.
Yeah, noticing is sort of a higher level, personalized, operationalized, almost weaponized version of awareness, right? And what I describe in the book around noticing is that I'd been robbed at gunpoint, and I wanted something. I wanted to learn something that addressed the kinds of threats and dangers in the world that people come up against that they feel like this is impossible, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how anybody would ever deal with this. This is stuff of the movies. It's not for the average person. So I found Krav Maga, and I wanted to learn as much as I could about it. And I had a couple of issues. The first issue was, as I went to instructor school, I had great instructors, but I wanted to learn from the source, which is Darren, right? So Darren's connection to EMI is well documented. It's profound. It's significant. And Darren was not readily available a whole ton of time. He was at that point a practicing ADA in Los Angeles County for the CAPOs, the Crime Against Police Officers unit, and he had a lot of demands on his time. So I kind of thought to myself, how am I gonna navigate this? What am I gonna do? And I said, I've got to notice more when I see really high level people, particularly Darren. I need to listen to what they're doing, but I need to notice more about what they're doing as well. So I decided to give myself a standard, which was I need to find a way to watch Darren from three different angles do a technique or a defense, and limit myself to no more than three questions about that defense, and be able to capture that defense at a really deep level. So I said, okay, how's that going to happen? And the first thing is like you have to have really great foundational, baseline knowledge. And because Krav Maga is an architecture-based, system-first architecture and a principle-based system, it's like, okay, so there's clues here. EMI left us basically the EMI code. And if I understand this well, then I can create meaning and insight around the application of this baseline knowledge while I'm watching, Darren do techniques and teach techniques. And so that concept of noticing was the thing that really helped me propel my insight and understanding around Krav Maga. I'm still learning, actually. But then it became something more. It's like, well, if I look in the world and I have a question about how to do something in the world or why something is or isn't happening, how do I notice? And how do I notice things I don't have direct access to, like using sources outside of my experience to notice things? And it just was something I wanted to call out in the book as something that led to the insights, but also something that's super important for people to start thinking about, which is not only awareness, but what's your process for noticing?
Well, and for me, I think noticing takes time and effort and energy. And in a society where, people are on their phones constantly and, there's so many stimulus and things happening, I think it takes an intention to notice. I had taken my kids out for a hamburger a couple weeks ago. And we made our order, we sat down, I was sitting down, I was just, trying to practice noticing, like looking around in my environment, seeing what was going on. And I noticed there was a young woman at the counter who was born with, some sort of deformity where she didn't have much of her hands. And I was just kind of watching her work, and I was almost like blown away by like how she was able to still like pick things up and move around. And she had a smile on her face and it was going really great. And then I looked at my kids and, they were like looking at what's going on the table or talking to each other, goof around or whatever. And I just asked them, I was like, hey, what do you notice about the young girl behind the counter? And it like took them a minute, but they were looking and they were watching. And then I could almost see on my younger son's face, like some kind of compassion, like come over his face. And then my older son was like, oh my goodness, like that must be so hard. But had I not brought up noticing and had I not like given them a prompt, like there's some lessons in conversation that we had after that about it that would have just totally been missed and could have been sucked away by me just, getting zoomed into my phone or whatever was going on. So I think there's so much application to noticing.
Yeah, it's a skill for life for sure. And it took me a minute to kind of realize, I can noticing extends beyond Krav Maga. I think with the world that we're in now, and the world we're going to have, your kids are going to have in particular, I think noticing is an essential life. It's literally like almost life or death. And what I mean by that is, um, take for instance AI and its applications in social media. There are already algorithms in social media that only feed you the information you already believe,
Right.
and to the point that you can be manipulated in insane ways, um, because they tie a piece of information to something you believe that takes your thought process in a different direction. And all of a sudden you're in a tower with a rifle, and it's like, We don't need this. And you think about just AI and social media as one application, and think about manipulation of people by governments, by corporations, and by criminal syndicates, worldwide. And if you don't know what you believe, and you don't know why you believe it, and you don't build powerful logic chains, and you don't have a way to notice things, particularly around noticing what is likely true and what is likely untrue, like a truth checklist,
Yeah.
you're going to be manipulated by the world around you. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, until I met you, I mean, I've heard people like, hey, pay attention or look around in your surroundings. And I think just even the word notice just adds more intention to it. Like what you're saying with AI, some people don't even notice or aren't even aware that they're only being fed certain information. And just to have that awakeness, I don't know if that's a word, but to be awake to like what's going on, I think is super powerful. So
Yeah,
after you get um the first section of the book is like a new way forward, and it includes the story about you being robbed and what is a warrior, what is a winner, and noticing. Then it goes into, you kind of already mentioned, like growth precursors. And are these kind of like footsteps that we can follow, or are these things that we can notice to achieve growth, or how would you explain that?
yeah. A precursor sets the conditions for success. So we can talk about it in this way. What must you do to break the cycle you're in and move in a direction that you want to move in, right? Um, so the first we can just talk about it quickly. Empty your cup. A
Mm,
lot of people in the coaching world will recognize that term. Essentially, Bruce Lee said, the cup's usefulness is its emptiness. And people think,
yeah.
well, wait a minute. I thought a cup was meant to be filled, but actually a cup is meant to be filled and emptied, filled and emptied, filled and emptied all over again, right? But when it's full, it doesn't have any use, right? So it's emptiness. And what we do is we show up in the world, we have our own patterns, our own rhythms, and we become so accustomed to them, um, that our cup is always full. There's no room to learn anything else. We believe what we believe, we think what we think. And the truth is, you know, we're often wrong. So having the capacity to empty your cup to make room for something new is super important. I say this all the time. The second one is suspend your disbelief, which
Yeah.
really means just believe anything is possible. When you do that, you open up a list of possibilities for yourself that are currently unavailable to you.
Yeah, I just
I
mentioned
won't,
this past weekend, where it's like if it's ever like between option A or B, we might be stuck because there's so many possibilities and so many options that it's really easy to cut that off without the idea of suspending your disbelief.
yep, 100%. I won't go through all of them, but some of the ones that I think are particularly will land on people is one is guard your thoughts, right?
Mm,
The the information coming out about how we think, about the world around us, and about ourselves is so compelling. The level of positivity. I mean, I remember seeing a video close up. I want to say it was Ronaldo. It was obviously in a soccer game or football, and he was about to take a penalty kick, and they had a close up on his face, and he said something. You could read his lips. He was saying something like, um, "I'm going to score.
mm,
Um, that's what I do. I score. That's who I am. I'm a scorer." And he was
yeah.
saying that to himself out loud right before the penalty kick. So the same tools that the world's best um, utilize to perform at the level they're performing at are available to anybody. They really are, and it's important people understand that. From Krav Maga, one of the things we talk about a lot is prove it to yourself.
Yeah,
And
that's huge.
yeah, so taking information, ensuring that it is um, real, uh, and proving to yourself that it's real before you act on it is super important. And I would say the other one maybe to call out right now, other than win in the mind first, um, which is something a lot of people don't think about a lot, is something called operational underway, which is this idea that when we hit roadblocks, we face adversity. A lot of times the human condition is to kind of hunker down, to get small, and to wait for the adversity to pass. And what happens is we do that with that thing, but we also do that in our life. right? So it's like, well, I'm not going to go work out today, and I'm not going to push forward with my project today. I'm worried about this other thing, and I'm just going to kind of sit and stew and get small. Operational underway is a reminder to us all that when you're facing things in life, the best way forward is to continue to operate, right? Fix your problem while you're moving towards your objective, right? Fix your problem while you're, moving towards the mission objective. I think that is something that really was powerful for me as I thought about, things in the past and things that I've had to face, and um, understanding that you can't get bogged down by adversity or danger or risk. You have to manage it well and keep moving. Keeping moving is key.
Well, I think that the adversity is going to come whether you're moving or not, right? And it's like if we stand still, we're still going to get bogged down with adversity. And if we take steps towards our goals, there's going to be other adversity, but at least we're moving towards like the life, the fulfillment, the purpose, the values that we've chosen, right?
Yeah. It's uniquely human. We just kind of we do get bogged down. So to have the intention to I'm going to move towards the objective, even though this other thing is sort of circling my orbit, in my orbit. I need to keep moving.
And then the third section of the book is the warriors and winners doctrine. How does this change or differ from the second part, like the growth precursors?
Yeah, these are things that you can do when the precursors are in place. You're ready to implement these concepts. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I One of my favorites is something I landed on a couple of years ago, which is prioritize, um, simplify, organize. And I write about Nick Saban as someone who embodies this concept. I mean, think about a coach who coaches young men. They're really almost kids when they get to the program, and he's had success at the collegiate level like no one ever has in terms of wins and losses, but also in terms of winning, you know, a championship at LSU and Alabama
Mm.
in two different eras. I mean, it's really unheard of. Um, and I thought to myself, like, let me watch him. Let me notice how he goes about his day. So I did a lot of noticing with Saban, and one of the key things he says to the kids is there are two questions you have to answer, and that's it. And the first question is, are you going to do what you need to do when you need to do it, even though you don't want to?
Mm.
And are you going to avoid doing the thing you want to do when you want to do it, when it's the wrong choice? And he said, how you answer those two questions will really shape your entire life. And he uses those two questions to shape how kids look at the time, effort, and attention they put into football, or he did. And then he backs that up with like organize, like prioritize. What's most important? Well, let's answer these questions. We'll simplify them. Well, let's say it in a way that everybody can understand it. And now let's organize our life or our program or our, process around the priority and the simplification of the priority. And for Saban, it was things as simple as, tuck your shirt in. Everybody tucks their shirt in. When we run lines, everybody touches the line. And he enforced it, and he enforced it with his coaches. And he did that to create a clear message to players that we have a way we do things around here. And nothing is unimportant. How you do anything is how you do everything. So
Yeah,
do you touch?
I was
Yeah,
literally just thinking that. It's like, yeah, if you have a standard for touching the line and tucking your shirt in, like that's going to apply to the bigger things, right?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a lot of Krav Maga in here as well. You'll see some chapters that um, either come from Krav Maga at our school or come from the principles of Krav Maga more widely. Fix your problem is a big one that comes from our school. We also have things like the 5 minute rule, which is something we try to implement when people get upset about their failure. Failure is necessary is a big chapter people really need to attach themselves to, especially younger people who are getting into their careers or are climbing the ladder, and they think that failure is the end of it, or they think that failure defines them, and they don't realize that failure is part of the process of finding success.
And I think that the quicker people can come to that, I mean, I can only really think about my own journey, but I remember earlier on with one of my mentors, it's like, if something didn't go perfectly, I would kind of want to avoid him and maybe not bring it up. And then as time went on and I matured a little bit, I started to realize I was like, man, if there's something that doesn't go well, I want to bring it to him. I want to bring this information so I can learn. And like the only way I'm going to get that learning is by accepting those failures, allowing them to happen, and then improving and getting them better. So yeah, I think the people who've become winners and who are successful are people that have just often failed way more times than other people are willing to try, and they just keep learning from it.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was a chapter I was writing. I was really thinking about my boys, and what they're growing up in, and how people tend to um, exacerbate and accentuate their losses, and they try to avoid recognizing their successes. And it's this culture of um, this competitive culture that has become part of the way kids grow up is really destructive. So I really thought about, what do I want to tell them about failures necessary
Mm.
in that particular chapter.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so obviously we don't want to give away the whole book, so we're not going to go through every single doctrine, but the part the last part of the book is you're all in, act like it. So is this tying the doctrines and tying the precursors and things together?
Yeah, it's really about avoiding playing small in life. It's about taking the precursors and the doctrine and implementing those things that are most applicable in your life right now. And it also sets a sort of a contextual roadmap for people. So, defining, what's sacred for them, um, getting them to aim at something. What is it like to set micro goals and milestones? Um, one of the things that I think is really interesting is deep in that section. I'm going to turn to it and tell you a little bit about it. We have this the precursors of doctrine, and I'll give you an example. Precursor number 5: prove it to yourself, and it's this little review. What is the value of that precursor, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then it's opportunity. What opportunities does this create in your life? And then what quality is required of you to leverage this precursor? So value, opportunity, and quality required. And that's maybe my favorite section of the book, because it really distills for the reader, this is what this is, and this is what can happen, or what the value of this precursor or doctrine is, and this is what's required of you to fully access it. And it's really a sort of a tight little section. I really like it, actually.
That's amazing. What is the plan for the launch? When can people get the book?
Yeah, so we had this sort of this conversation with some of the staff, and the goal is to try to get the book, which I quickly published, to take to Europe with me, on the Amazon bestseller list. And we think that there's some value for the community in having um, a worldwide staff member and Krav Maga instructor having written an Amazon bestseller.
Yeah.
Um, so the more attention we can get as a community, the better. And so on September 1st, during the waking hours, we're asking people, if they're interested in the book, to purchase the paperback version on Amazon. It's under $20. I think it's well worth the read. And to see if we can't, as a community, achieve a little milestone here, which is, Amazon bestseller. Again, the book is called Conquer Culture: How Warriors and Winners Lead and Succeed. It's got a pretty cool double C icon that looks like a Spartan helmet on it.
Cool.
which I like. And
Yeah, that's great.
I really enjoyed writing it. A lot of the Krav Maga stuff is in there. And I think that people will benefit from the book. I think it's a quick read. My mom got an advanced copy and she goes, "Oh, I don't know anything about any of this, so I have to read it slowly." So for people that are Krav Maga practitioners, for people that are in any kind of performance space, athletes, coaches, stock traders, um, professors, um, trainers, they're going to pick up on it very, very quickly. And I would say people will pick up on it quickly, especially people under 50 who are sort of in this, revolving cycle of angst and frustration. So redefining, a warrior and winner, redefining the direction you want to take your life, or even recalibrating, either one. That's going to be something that those people, because they're sort of primed for it, I think they're going to read the book pretty quickly. I got the book. My wife was out of town last week. It was on my bedside table, and I was like, you know what? I'll just read it. And so I read it laying in bed one night. Of course, I know what it says, so I can read it pretty fast. But I think people will find it's a pretty quick read. There's also a companion to it, which is the field manual plus journal.
Mm.
And I had a group come in and train me last week, and I showed them both the book and the field manual. And some very successful people, at least by the world standards, walked up to me and said, "I flipped through the journal and I was shocked at how useful and powerful it is, because most journals are kind of like generic." And I said, "Well, it's connected to the precursors of the doctrine. So anybody that wants to get that journal and do that work, I think it could be, an additional layer of power and promise for the trajectory of their life in the future, potential."
Yeah, it's just incredible what a little bit of intention, some thoughts and reflection on like where we want to go, what we want to achieve can accomplish. And then like combining that with these powerful doctrines that, I think as I read through it, several of them are like you said, with that coach, they're things you've noticed in the world of other people who are really successful with it. So now if the reader is reading the book and then journaling about these things and putting into practice these successful doctrines, like just seems like it's a life-changing transformational opportunity.
Yeah, I love what the book says and what it asks the reader to do. It's something that can be implemented in pieces or as things become more relevant for the reader. And I think it's not something that requires a specific action from somebody, which I think is important, right? Today, it's like, how to build a house or how to build a habit, or it's like, this is the way to navigate life. It's a blueprint. It's not exhaustive, but here's a bunch of things you need to consider. And as you consider them, consider what things are needed in your life right now. And as you move forward, what things are needed later as you, arrive at those points in your life. So I really like the book. I call it my practice book because it's my first book. But I think that the end result was something that I'm proud of and something that I think genuinely can help people move forward in life.
Well, I'm really excited for it, CJ, and I'm also excited that you started to become a writer, because I think everything that you've put together and you've noticed and that you've understood and unraveled and uncovered are things that a lot of people can really benefit from. So the fact that you're putting it down, not only for your boys, but for the world to be able to lean into, I think is really special. And I can't wait to be able to read it.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me about it. And I'm really excited for people to get into it. I would especially Kravis, they'll understand Retsa, they'll understand closest weapon, nearest target, speed and leverage at 90 degrees. And we just talk about how that applies in life. And I think one of the most interesting things I didn't mention is this. This is something I've been talking with Darren about for years. Like, how do the principles of Krav Maga create a blueprint for living life? And it's not exhaustive, but these are things that must be considered, should be considered, and will help you move forward in life. So I very much appreciate the time, Joel.
Thank you, CJ.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Krav Maga Worldwide podcast. To access additional resources, read show transcripts, or to submit your questions and topic suggestions for future episodes, visit kravmaga.com/podcast.